So this is why your current ROAS targets are actually wrong, and why you need gross profit to properly calculate contribution profit and your actual ROAS targets that you should have on the ad accounts. And that will result into you growing your business and having more profit. Usually the conversations is a brand owner probably working with like a freelancer or like an agency, and they have a very specific target that they need to be on, like a 10x ROAS or like a 5x ROAS, or whatever that is. And usually they don't even give a gross margin to the agency, but this is very important in order to calculate your ROAS target, and it's important for the agency or the service provider to actually help you out here. If you working with an agency and don't potentially you have given them pushback if they have asked for the gross margin, make sure you actually give it after this video. And if you are working with an agency and they haven't actively asked for that gross margin, switch agencies, to be honest, because we are going to see here exactly what that means and how that influences your scalability. So let's say that you have your current spend is like 50,000, your current revenue is 50,000, right? 5,000 in terms of spend. You're generating 50,000 dollars in terms of revenue with 5K in terms of ad spend. And usually, obviously, what most businesses have is a ROAS target, or an even better one, what you need to kind of shift towards is an MER target. Basically, MER is really, it kind of measures your overall efficiency across all the ad spend, all the marketing efforts, and all the revenue. So it's a much better metric, because ROAS, in-platform ROAS, always all those in-platform metrics are inaccurate on the other platforms, and it's like really ever that they are actually accurate. Maybe like it is not like a fraction of the total brands that we actually work with at the moment. And you can also have CPA and a CAC goal, right? Again, CPA is in platform cost per acquisition, and CAC is actually measuring the customers acquired from a Shopify, which again, a much better metrics. So with that said, let's say with this, you have a ROAS of 10. And then in terms of the total amount of orders, you can potentially say that you have an average order value by $100. That would give you $500, 500 orders. Sorry, so let me just put here. So you have 500 orders. So your total cost per acquisition is just $10, right? So with that, you essentially have, with that is like, we don't even know what's actually profiting. And so if you want, for example, let's say that you want to now scale the business to 100K, you want to double the revenue, and you think that this will be done with like 20K in terms of spend, and this will result, for example, into this results into a decrease in MER, which is 5, and a CPA, and actually doubling at 20 kind of pounds or $20, whatever that is. Now we all know one thing, that essentially the more that you scale spend, efficiency will decrease. Obviously, we are going to do as marketers the best that we can do to control that efficiency, but it is a hard rule that when you scale spend, your efficiency will decrease, and that's based on hard facts, because obviously you are expanding into broader cold audiences, so it makes sense to have that CAC be higher. So essentially here, there's two ways when you try to do any kind of forecasting with the client or with your business specifically, when you have that conversation with the client, there's, I think, two ways that this can go to. One is going to be, we want to double the business. This is, from my experience as a marketer working with other brands, this is like roughly what you expect to happen on ROAS and CAC. Obviously, the main issue with that is that it's really out of your head and not with like hard kind of facts. And obviously, it doesn't again tell us anything about, is this scenario more profitable than this scenario? It doesn't make sense. So the other scenario is that you present those numbers to the business owners and they're like, no, this is like too deep, too steep of an efficiency drop. I want basically to improve my ROAS while I'm improving my revenue, which is again not possible. So there's either two ways out of this conversation. One will be, okay, I trust you as a marketer, and based on your expertise. So they're gonna be, the client will say, or the business will say, okay, these targets make sense. Go actually and kind of get them. The other one is that, again, just maintain the 10x ROAS, for example. So as we're gonna see now, this like when you dive deep and you get the kind of gross margin here, everything like it's completely more clear. Let's say that I bring the gross margin 65%, which is again in my experience the pretty average. Again, the higher the better, to be honest. But if you take on COGS and everything, it's usually around 65%. Anything below 50% or 60% is like very hard to make our own like paid ads. And that also gives you a proxy in terms of like what's the biggest bottleneck to scale. So in that scenario, we are profiting the contribution profit, which is essentially just to make sure that we are all aligned, is the amount of revenue times the gross margin, so the actual like gross profit. And this is divided by the ad spend. So it's like that contribution profit, which is essentially the key metric to track in order to make decisions in a more like longer term scale. Obviously, on the more day to day, you have that MER, that CAC, that again they also ladder up to that contribution profit. But as you can see here, we are profiting like 27K. Let's say that I put the same numbers here, right? The 65% when we double the business. Now, at first glance, this makes completely sense. You're basically doubling your profit. If you maintain obviously the ad spend and you want to hit that kind of revenue target, but at first glance, this seems as like a kind of inefficiency, but actual, this is more profit for you as a business owner. If the business owner has said to the marketing guy, whatever that is, this is ridiculous. We can't really be kind of having 50% less over like an efficiency here. This is just completely completely random, and they're probably gonna fire the agency and they're gonna find another agency that they're gonna keep that, I guess, 10 extra hours or whatever that is, which again will lead into the business not growing essentially. This gives you much more clarity, as you can see here. So for example, let's say that now if you do obviously and get a bit more historical data and you do a bit more analysis, you say, I can't really hit that with 20K ad spend. I can hit this with like 40K ad spend, for example. At 2.5 MER and a $40 CAC, you can see that, this potentially doesn't make sense. Unless, again, this is a bit of a quotation, a bit more advanced, I guess, if it is a bit of a subscription business where you say, okay, I'm basically doubling the volume of orders because I have a subscription going into like, day 30, that will lead into more net profit in the long run. But again, this is for subscription focused businesses. That's why it's very important to distinguish. But you can make decisions here, and really the goal with that is to find how much can I spend that it will lead to high contribution profit, so it can lead to more revenue and more volume essentially. So if you really think about it, we are moving away from that conversation of like how we can maintain CAC into what's the highest possible CAC that I can acquire customers with the current setup to acquire more money, to make more money essentially. So okay, maybe this is not feasible. So let's say that we have $30 spent, or we try, for example, to maybe it's like 34. It still makes sense. So this is a much viable scenario here. Now this way, this way it's also super important that you have that gross margin in place to calculate your numbers, because it's a completely different business, right? You're basically, and this is like obviously random numbers. It can be monthly, it can be weekly, it can be daily, whatever that is. Obviously, this is not net profit, and that's why we need to go a step further, which is how we can calculate the net profit of the business. Now I know obviously some business owners will be kind of I guess hesitant to provide this information with the business owners or with the kind of agency or service providers, but it gives you much more control as a service provider here to make decisions that will lead to more net profit, right? Because I know like people can be funny in terms of like some of the kind of profit numbers, but when you're working with a marketing expert here or a marketing partner, it's really important that we actually have this. So, but what exactly do we need for that? We need the OpEx and the fixed cost. That number, let's say that is 5K. This is again, it can be payroll, it can be all the operating expenses. Maybe you have a freelancer, whatever that is, and you are paying 5K. So the real net profit here, so the net profit as you can see here is 22K. So basically you're profiting 22K. Here you potentially gain like, obviously I would say for that big of a jump here in terms of like the double the revenue, we shouldn't need let's say that this is like monthly. We shouldn't need extra hires for that. probably maybe like a VA to handle customer support, maybe like, 6K, let's go to 6K. You're still ending up with more profit, obviously a lot more customers as well, which we can lead into retaining customer revenue as well. So this is a much better kind of scenario for the business where initially at first glance, a hesitant kind of business owner that, has managed the kind of ads internally, they may potentially have other by kind of agencies where they have really focused on that 10x MER or that 10x ROAS, they're gonna lead with less profit in the end, and then the other business owner, which is sees the numbers and gets all the numbers into a calculator like this, for example, which I'm gonna link down below as well, so you can actually use it. But yeah, it's very simple, and you can see here the key things to learn is like you need to give the gross margin to every service provider that you are working with, or if you do this internally now, just make sure you kind of go through this exercise and not just be fixating on one number, because I guarantee you're gonna end them 2 years later with the exact same revenue numbers, and maybe even worse, depending on like if you take the CPMs increasing and the competitiveness of the market or the sophistication of the market itself. So the real action point here is use this simple calculator. Obviously, this can be a lot more advanced. I'll probably do another video of that, or maybe just if you click the link below, I'll have one on my resources as well. But you can see here the really impact that has to your business here. So yeah, thanks a lot, and I hope you really enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.